What's going on, everybody? Tello Talk Podcast back again with another episode. And today we've got our third out of 8 episodes looking at each division in the NFL and looking through their schedule to see what we think is going to happen this next year with way too early predictions. Today is going to be the AFC North edition, as the next one will be the NFC North. The last one we just had was the NFC South. If you haven't gone and seen that, I would recommend you go and see that. It was a good one. I had my good buddy Jackson Kreiner on there, and we talked NFC South for that one. But today, we've got a very good division, in my opinion, with the AFC North. And we've got teams like the Bengals and the Ravens, who had just made the playoffs this last year. We've got a team like the Steelers, who are starting to look a little bit younger, a little bit more of a question team. And then we got the Browns, who have a lot of good pieces. We're just got to wonder if they're going to be able to put them all together. But we're going to be going through every team today. And just to get right into it, I'm not going to leave you waiting. We're going to just hop right into the first team, which is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. That is the first team we're going to do today. As if you were watching on YouTube, as always, the schedules, should be up on the screen. And you will be able to see basically whenever they play, who they're playing. This one may not be as easy to see because of the way the graphic is, but there's the schedule there. I'm going to read it out anyways. So the Pittsburgh Steelers next year have got a lot to prove. They've got a young squad. They've got a young quarterback in Kenny Pickett. They've got his number one guy in George Pickens. They've got third-year running back Najee Harris coming off of not that much of a down year, but a little bit of a down year for his standards compared to his rookie season. In this defense that they've got is great, in my opinion, but this is a make or break year for them. I think that they're always going to have a good chance in making the playoffs, and maybe not in the playoff games when they've got Mike Tomlin at head coach, who is one of the best head coaches in the entire league. It is crazy he's never had a losing season. They went 8-1 last year, I believe. They started the season like 4-8, won 4 games to finish the season. And however, to start off with them, I don't see them having that bad of a struggle at the beginning of the year. I think Kenny Pickett is my biggest candidate for breakout player of the year. I think he's going to have that second-year jump, kind of like Trevor Lawrence did, and how Jalen Hurts, even though it wasn't his second year, Jalen Hurts just had that. I think this is going to be Kenny Pickett's year to do that. And the reason I say that is I really have a lot of hope in Kenny Pickett. I love him as a player. He was a Heisman finalist his last year at Pitt in college. He played phenomenally at Pitt. He had Jordan Addison at that year, but then Jordan Addison went to USC that very next year, and he's got a very good, talented receiver like George Pickens, kind of like how he did have Jordan Addison in college. But I'm excited to see how Kenny Pickett plays, especially because I think that he's going to have his breakout year. But we'll get into their schedule first. With their start the season with San Francisco, and that's going to be a scary one for me. I don't think you start your season off right. Most teams, you always want to start a season off. Every team wants to start off with the win. They're not going to. I feel like they might even get embarrassed in this game by the Niners. I think the Niners are going to be one of the best teams in the NFL this next year if they can get their quarterback situation all fixed up. Even if they have Sam Darnold under center week 1, I think he'll just be just fine. Sam Darnold's shown that he could be a serviceable. He's been pretty bad as a career, but there's been games where he shows that he could be a serviceable quarterback, and especially under Kyle Shanahan's system with all those weapons, I guarantee you he does just fine. But that'll be a embarrassing one for Pittsburgh. But after that, I think they win their next 3. They play Cleveland, Las Vegas, and Houston, and they win all 3 of those. I think they start off 3-1 heading into week 5. And I think this is around the time where Kenny Pickett really, brushes off the first game blues, and I think he starts off this great campaign. But they will lose, however, in week 5 to Baltimore right before their bye week. I have high hopes for Baltimore. You'll hear about them later. They'll be the last team today. But I don't think they beat Baltimore. I think they will beat Baltimore at least once this year. It always seems like they split their series between each other. It's always a tough, hard battle, great rivalry. So I think they drop this one, and then they'll win the next one eventually towards the end of the year. Coming out of the bye week, especially at 3-2, they still know that they've got that contention possibility, and I actually do have them dropping one to the Los Angeles Rams. As much as I want to give it to them, I still think the Rams will be a lot better of a team with a much healthier roster, even though they don't have Jalen Ramsey. I don't think they make the divisional a race between them and San Francisco, and maybe throw Seattle in there too again. I don't see that happening, but I think Matthew Stafford, if he stays healthy and Cooper Kupp stays healthy, this team will be a lot better. I have the Rams taking this one, going to 3-3. And then I have Pittsburgh winning their back-to-back games against two AFC South opponents, the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans. Both these games are in Pittsburgh, and I have them winning both because I think they're going to have some good defensive performances in these two games. As I said, I love this defense. They've got one of the best safeties in the league in Minkah Fitzpatrick. They've got a little bit of an aging Cameron Hayward. They've got arguably the best edge rusher in T.J. Watt, who we missed a couple games last year, but last year before that, he tied the sack record when DPOY, and he only played 14 and a half games that season. So I got them winning those two, but then I have them going on a little skid. I have them losing 3 straight to Green Bay, Cleveland, and Cincinnati. I don't think they'll beat Cincinnati this year, even though they had the chances to beat Cincinnati they did beat Cincinnati last season during Cincinnati's little shaky start when they started 4-4, and then Cincinnati went on their 8-game winning streak. I just think these divisional games, in this division especially, are very, very hard to win. It's a very hard division to win in. It's a very tough division. We've seen it historically. There's teams besides the Browns until kind of recently where they've been able to compete with these divisional teams in the games, not in the entire season. They're tough ones, and I don't think the Steelers will be able to have that great of a divisional record. I think they go around somewhere the 3-3, the 2-4 mark, as I do have them going 2-4. I have them with wins against Cleveland and Baltimore, one for each, losing to those teams once, and then losing to Cincy twice. So after that, they go play Arizona, which in my opinion is a guaranteed win. Arizona will probably go 1-16, maybe 0-17 next year. That's the only team I think could actually go 0-17, even though we haven't seen it in a long time. We haven't seen an 0-16 season in forever. It's very, very possible. I mean, you look at what the Jets and the Jaguars looked like 2 years ago when they had the Tank for Trevor sweepstakes, and those teams were horrendous. I mean, they were 2-13 and 1-14 going into week 17. It was bad. So you can see that happening again. And granted, obviously, the Cardinals, we'll talk about them later. They fully depend on Kyler Murray's health, but their team's a whole dumpster fire. So Pittsburgh gets that one easily. They also are going to beat New England and Indianapolis. I think New England, as I've said, is going to have a little bit of a struggle year this next year. I think this is going to be where they find out Mac Jones isn't the guy. Indianapolis, it's going to be towards the later end of the year. I'm going to hope that Anthony Richardson is having himself a good season at that point, but I still think the Pittsburgh Steelers, the well-rounded team they are, is going to be a lot better at this point of the year, especially with them seeming to play a lot better towards the end of the year. However, I do have them losing their next two against Cincy and Seattle, putting them at 8-8. Shocker. The Steelers are near 500, winning record on the line. Obviously, they go out and beat Baltimore in Week 18, in my opinion, get that series tie between the two teams, and finished at the season 9-8. Now, could they have made the playoffs as a 7 seed at 9-8? I think it's possible. I mean, our 7 seed last year was the Dolphins at 9-8, and we've been seeing a lot of 9-8 teams make the playoffs. I mean, we saw Seattle, who was 9-8, who made the playoffs. The 9-7-1 Giants made the playoffs last year. So it's very, very possible that these teams could make the playoffs. A 9-8 team could make the playoffs. Now, I haven't gone through every schedule yet, so I can't really tell you who I think is going to be in the playoffs yet. Once I'm done with every schedule, we will go back in and we will actually put all through the records, put them into standings, and on the Instagram we'll have a little playoff bracket, in my opinion, and then we'll probably have another episode as well talking about my way too early playoff predictions. I know playoffs. I'm talking about playoffs in the middle of July. That's absolutely crazy. The playoffs are in January, February. You're never too early. You're never too early. You can never be too early because who knows? You make a great prediction and then you can be like, look at that. I made the prediction back in August about who was going to be in the Super Bowl, and I'm right. That's something, just for fun. But Steelers finish at 9-8. I've got them at third in the division, and right ahead of Cleveland, who they're going to finish about a game ahead of. Some key things I wanted to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers about is their additions. They've signed Keanu Neal, who's been a pretty good, I would say, above average guy at DB. They had Pat Pete that they just signed from him leaving the Vikings. He's old. He's getting up in age, but he had a little bit of a resurgence season last year. He had a pretty good season compared to his last couple years. So that actually just helps them a lot. Keanu Neal, having Patrick Peterson, having Minkah Fitzpatrick, that all around that defense is gonna be a good one. And then let's talk about their draft. The Pittsburgh Steelers had a phenomenal draft. I mean, you picked up Joey Porter Jr. in the second round. You got Broderick Jones in the first round, also stealing him from the New York Jets, who clearly wanted an offensive lineman to protect Aaron Rodgers, as their offensive line is horrendous. And then Broderick Jones goes to Pittsburgh, who I thought was probably the best choice possible for Pittsburgh in the first round. You've got Darnell Washington, who you get in the third round. The Pittsburgh Steelers drafted almost perfectly. They probably had the best draft out of any team, except maybe the Eagles. You could put the Eagles in there. The two Pennsylvania teams had perfect drafts. I mean, Pittsburgh, I just can't get over the fact they got Joey Porter Jr., they got Broderick Jones, and Darnell Washington as those three main guys that came to the roster. And they're a very young team, and being able to add those key young players to especially the offensive side of the ball, and then have Joey Porter Jr. as well for that defense that has a little bit of aging guys, and have that young rookie who can play under guys like Pat Pete and learn a lot, is huge for the Steelers team. And I could actually see them doing better than 9-8 because of all these new things and all these new additions. My biggest problem, though, is can they fix their passing offense? They only had 12 touchdowns last year, which was last in the NFL when it came to passing. Obviously, if you heard about what I said earlier, I think Kenny Pickett's going to have himself a great breakout year. I think having George Pickens, having a guy like Pat Freiermuth, having a guy like Darnell Washington is going to be huge for Kenny Pickett, and it's going to be huge for Najee Harris, who, coming off a little bit of a down year compared to rookie season, is going to have a good year, in my opinion. He's going to have better blockers. He's going to have that guy like Darnell Washington, who's going to be a phenomenal blocking tight end. He is pretty much a sixth offensive lineman out on the field. I'm excited to watch the Steelers team. As much as I really am not that big of a Steelers fan, I'm excited to watch them, and I'm basically ready to see how their whole season unravels, especially with how good of a coach Mike Tomlin is. I would not be surprised if he's able to put stuff together and make it a great season, a better season than we expect. But that's it for the Steelers. We're going to go on and talk about the next team today, which is going to be the team, one of the two in Ohio, Cincinnati. The Cincinnati Bengals won this division last year at 12-4, only played one less game because of the canceled game. They lost in the AFC Championship game with very little time left due to the Joseph Asai, a little bit of a dumb push out of bounds while Mahomes is already out, and costing them a 15-yard penalty. Now, don't get me wrong. I bet you it was just he was in the moment, didn't realize. That guy probably feels awful. I thought the Bengals probably would have beaten the Eagles. I think the team out of the AFC would have been the Super Bowl champ this last season, and I honestly think it could be the same thing again. I think it's going to be a team out of the AFC to win the Super Bowl, whether that's the Chiefs again, the Bengals, possibly the Bills if they can get it together, the Jets if they can, live up to all this hype, the Dolphins if Tua can stay healthy, even teams like the Ravens. The Ravens could go out there and Lamar could have himself a little get-back season. But we'll get into the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm just going to get into their schedule right now. We'll talk about them in a little bit in other different areas. I think they're not going to have that little bit of a struggle they did last year, that semi-Super Bowl hangover that they eventually got over. I think they start their first 4 weeks with a win, starting 3-1. Their only loss to Baltimore, which I think they will still compete with for the division throughout the entire season, kind of like they did last year with Baltimore, I believe, finishing at 11-6, and yeah, it's not 11-6, maybe even 12-5. They had a good year without Lamar Jackson as well, and they almost actually knocked off Cincinnati in the wild card. But Cincinnati, first 4 weeks, 3-1. Going into their bye week, which is week 7, I'm going to have them at 4-2, which I think is very respectable for them. I think they're still going to be one of those top teams in the league, but they're going to have to come out of their bye week and face another top team in the league in San Francisco, and I don't see them picking that one up. I think this is when San Fran's got their quarterback situation all situated out, and they're just such a good team. If we can get them out of the NFC this year into the Super Bowl, it's going to be a good one, whoever they face, but that's just if they can actually get into the Super Bowl. I mean, they've missed it the past 2 years, making it to the conference championship game in the past 2 years and losing in the conference championship game due to very tragic things happening in the game, such as 2 years ago when Jaquiski Tart dropped a wide-open interception, and last year when they ended up having Brock Purdy get hurt, and then their fourth stringer, John Johnson, got hurt. Their fourth stringer. So then they had to put Christian McCaffrey at quarterback for some plays and basically run the ball the entire time. So the Eagles knew what they were going to do. The Eagles knew they weren't going to pass. So the Eagles, all they had to do was run commit. But San Francisco is going to win that one. I do have Cincinnati beating Buffalo in their divisional rematch from last year. I think they just kind of have the upper edge against Buffalo and in most of the games they play against each other. And this is where they go on a little run. They always have the time in the season they go on a run. Right now, I've got them at 5-3. I think that they beat Houston, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, Indiana, Minnesota, and they also beat Pittsburgh. So I've got them winning 6 straight, with 2 wins against divisional rival Pittsburgh, 1 win against divisional rival Baltimore, and obviously with 6 straight wins, that puts them at 11-3. This is where they start fighting with the Chiefs and the Bills, for that number 1 seed in the division, in the conference. Sorry, they've kind of pulling away from Baltimore for the first seed in the division, and then they go and drop. I think they drop it to Kansas City and Arrowhead, not Burrowhead. But you can't call it Burrowhead anymore because now he has lost a game in Kansas City. So I've got Patrick Mahomes out-dueling Joe Burrow in a great quarterback duel, like they always have one in Week 17, but then beating Cleveland to finish at 13-4 and most likely getting the number 2 seed in the AFC playoffs, facing the worst wildcard team in the wildcard round. Now, to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals, as I said, 13-4, first in the division. My favorite thing they did this offseason isn't, the whole T. Higgins stuff, saying people, no, he's staying. Their draft, which was a pretty decent draft. My favorite thing was the fact that they are resetting their entire defensive backcourt. Their biggest question 2 years ago, especially in the playoffs, in the Super Bowl, was their defensive backs, with guys like Eli Apple out there, not knowing what he was really doing, getting torched. They had a very, very bad passing defense 2 years ago. It improved a little bit this last year, but this year, I'm really excited. Second-year player Cam Taylor-Britt had a great rookie season, in my opinion, a very underrated rookie season. He played phenomenal in the divisional round, in my opinion, as well against the Buffalo Bills. And then they've also going to have a full season from Chidobe Awuzie, which having a full season from him is going to be big, as he is a pretty good corner, in my opinion. And then they also, despite losing Jesse Bates, it's a huge, huge loss, in my opinion, because he's a great safety. But I think what they did right is they went out in the draft and they got a lot of young DBs. They got DJ Turner, the speed phenom who ran the 4.28, I believe it was, in the 40-yard dash at the combine from Michigan. And then they also got one of my favorite safeties from the this last draft class, which was a little not as good for safeties in this draft class. Jordan Battle out of Alabama, who I think can be an absolute stud. They got him, and he's going to have a great rookie season alongside of edge rusher Miles Murphy to go along with Sam Hubbard, Trey Hendrickson. This pass rush is going to be very, very dangerous in my opinion. The defense is going to be looking good. I don't think it's going to be like one of those top 5 defenses, but it's going to be a good one. I think it's going to be a team that is a very good defense away. That's what this is. This team is a very good defense away from being a Super Bowl winner. We know they're Super Bowl contenders, but are they Super Bowl winners? I think they need to have a defense that can perform better, and this is the year I think that really that defense takes the jump that they didn't 2 years ago and last year. With that, the other side of the ball, the offense. One of the best offenses in the game. They've got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd as well. They lost Hayden Hurst, but they picked up Irv Smith Jr., who's also a pretty good tight end, who played with the Vikings previously. And then they've got their man in Joe Burrow, who is phenomenal. Second best quarterback in the league right now, right behind Patrick Mahomes. He's a proven winner. He did it in college. He's been doing it so far in the NFL. Just has not been able to grasp that Super Bowl that they let out of their grasp 2 years ago. I think if there's a year they can get it done this year. I don't know if the Chiefs. I would love to see another repeat champ, but I don't know if the Chiefs can do it again this year, especially with the Bengals improving on defense and the Chiefs having a little bit of a question mark at wide receiver next year. It's with losing Juju Smith-Schuster, which isn't really that big of a loss, but with the deep wide receiver chart they have, it's very, very shaky. But this Bengals team has proved to us that their Super Bowl appearance wasn't a fluke. Their 10-7 season, winning the division 2 years ago, and then winning the division again, and just showing how good they are in the playoffs. They proved to us this is not a fluke. I'm hoping for a great season. As for instance, let me go back. If I go back and look back from last year, I thought they were going to go 11-6 and tie for first with Baltimore for the division. I didn't think they were going to have this good of a season that they did last year. But now they've kind of proven to everyone that, hey, we're a team here to stay. We're not a 1-year thing. We're here to compete for a Super Bowl. And I could see them winning a Super Bowl this year, as I could have last year. But I love this team. And I mean, the biggest problem that you got to look at, though, for them is the fact that Joe Burrow is on his last year, his 5th year of his rookie. No, not his 5th year, but he's on that exercise like towards the end of his rookie contract deal. And you're seeing guys like Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, who are getting these $50 million a year contracts, and the quarterback market is absolutely skyrocketing right now. And you got a guy like Joe Burrow, who's also been to the Super Bowl, who's also an MVP caliber quarterback. And you look at it, a guy who's won MVP in Lamar is getting $52 million a year, and then you get a guy like Jalen Hurts who just made the Super Bowl is getting $51 million a year. If you're the Bengals, you got to look at that and say, well, we're going to have to pay Joe Burrow that if he wants to stay. Now, I believe Joe Burrow would probably be more willing to take a more team-friendly deal so he can keep guys like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, because money doesn't grow on trees for franchises when you got a salary cap. You just can't keep on spending. I mean, it kind of does grow on trees, but the NFL tells you, hey, you can grow this money on trees, but we're giving you a limit. You're not allowed to grow that much money. You can have this much money that you grow from trees, and you can't use anything else. So I think he'll take that more. And I mean, when you got a guy like Jamar Chase who's on a rookie deal, I think T. Higgins is still on his rookie deal as well. You're going to have to pay both of those guys soon, and both of those guys are 25, almost $30 million a year caliber guys, like Tyreek Hill type contracts. But I think that they're going to find the way to do it, obviously. And I think their Super Bowl window has the possibility to be open for a long time, but I think right now is their best shot. So don't be surprised if you see Cincinnati hosting a Lombardi this upcoming year. And that's all I got to say about Cincinnati. And we'll move on to the next team in their division, which is the Cleveland Browns. Now, for the Cleveland Browns, there's a lot that's going to be expected from them, in my opinion. I think they could have that good season. I think it's either going to be a great season for them or a lackluster season for them. And honestly, I think they're not going to have that great season. They've got the weapons. They've got the pieces, like Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Nick Chubb at the running back, who's one of the best running backs in the NFL, and kind of plays that hard-earned, just run after contact, gain extra yards, fight for extra yard type running from Nick Chubb. And then obviously they've got the man at the helm, Deshaun Watson. Not a very good person, but a good football player last time he played back in 2020. He actually led the league in passing with over 4,800. But getting into their schedule, I don't think they have a great start to the year. I don't see them winning a game until week 8. I really don't. I think they're outmatched. They're gonna be outmatched through most of these games, and then they're gonna have a little bit of fluke games. I think Tennessee and Indianapolis actually get upsets over Cleveland. I think Cleveland sucks against their divisional opponents, and then obviously they have to play San Francisco, which isn't going to be great for them in week 6. So it sounds crazy, but I got them dropping 6, and then I have them beating Seattle in Seattle, which I really wanted to give Seattle that, but I didn't see them starting the season 0-7. 0-6 is already absolutely wild. So the fact that I'm going to put them at 0-6, I couldn't put them at 0-7. I mean, because that would have ended them at like a 7-10, 6-11 season. I don't see them doing that. I see them staying around that 500 mark, however, give or take 1 or 2 games. So 7-10 is possible. 10-7 is possible. But I have them beating Arizona, as everybody should. And then I have them losing once again to Baltimore, but then going on a little bit of a run. I think this is when Deshaun Watson shows flashes of his 2020 self back with Houston. I think they beat Pittsburgh, beat Denver, beat Los Angeles, beat Jacksonville, beat Chicago, and then beat Houston. That's a big run. That's a 6-game winning streak. What I've got them doing, I got them winning 6 in a row, and just like that, you're going from being 1-7, 2-7 to 8-7. You're at 8-7 now, but then I actually have them dropping the last 2 games against New York and Cincinnati, finishing their season right under 500 at 8-9, which is a very disappointing season for them. But I just think they're gonna have a terrible first half to the year. My thing with with Cleveland, is they got teams like Cincinnati in their division who are just high-powered offenses, which Cleveland has actually been able to compete with in the past couple of years. They've always been able to fight with them, and I don't see it happening this year, though, however. But my biggest things with Cleveland is obviously the Deshaun Watson situation. He's getting his first full season at quarterback since 2020. Can he perform up to the same standard that he did back in 2020? I mean, he had a lot worse weapons. He had DeAndre Hopkins, and that's about it in Houston, was DeAndre Hopkins. I think he might have had Brandon. No, I think Brandon Cooks was still on the Rams at that time. So don't quote me on that, however. And now he's got better weapons, in my opinion. I mean, he's got Amari Cooper, and he's got Elijah Moore. He's got what's his name? David Njoku at tight end, who is a serviceable tight end. He could be good at sometimes. Obviously, Nick Chubb. They don't have Kareem Hunt anymore. He's a free agent who is a pretty good receiving back for them. So you might not see that much receiving back game for the Cleveland Browns. But the biggest thing I want to talk about is how good of a draft they had for how little picks they had. Their first pick was not in the first round because of that Texans trade. I don't even think it was second round. Their first pick, though, was Cedric Tillman. If you don't know who Cedric Tillman is, let me educate you a little bit on who Cedric Tillman is. Cedric Tillman's a wide receiver out of Tennessee, and Cedric Tillman was supposed to have that good season that Jalen Hyatt had. Everybody expected him to come out and be the best wide receiver in the SEC last year. Now, I think he had to deal with injuries last year, and if we can see a fully healthy season, obviously he'll be the third option in Cleveland behind Elijah Moore, and Amari Cooper, but he's going to be a great pickup for Deshaun Watson as he is a great wide receiver. His route tree is a lot better than his former teammate Jalen Hyatt's, so he's going to have a lot more versatility. He's going to be learning under a great route runner and Amari Cooper, and you'll probably see him more on the outside, and then have Amari Cooper and him on the outside, and then Elijah Moore in the slot, which would be a very dangerous trio, in my opinion, if Tillman can play like he was going to play in college. And then also they got Siaki Ika, defensive tackle from Baylor, which is huge in my opinion. It solidifies that defensive line because they also have Myles Garrett, and then they just recently added Zadarius Smith from Minnesota, who is a good edge rusher. I mean, you look at what he did with Green Bay, and then he left Green Bay and went to Minnesota, and then you look what he did with Minnesota. He had a great year. So having him and Myles Garrett on the same D line with this new Siaka Ika, I hope I'm saying that right, who is a absolute big man. He is huge, and he's a force to be reckoned with. I actually wouldn't have minded if the Saints picked him up in the later rounds. However, they did go Brian Bresee in the first round. I think he'll be a great addition. And then they also got one of my favorite offensive linemen from this last draft, DeJuan Jones, in like round 5 or 6, who I thought would be off the board in round 2 or 3. I think a lot of people expected him to be off the board a lot faster than round 5, 6. He did not seem like a day 3 prospect. He looked like a day 2 prospect, early day 2. So the fact that they were able to get that, and then obviously they've got Dorian Thompson-Robinson from UCLA if they need him to step up for Deshaun Watson if there's any injuries. I think he'll be a stud. He was a stud at UCLA. I think he has the potential to be a stud in the NFL. However, he won't really get those opportunities as much. But that's really all I've got for Cleveland. I got them 8-9, 4th in the division. I'm hoping to see a good season from them, though. I think they've got the pieces for it. Now, I'm not hoping for Deshaun Watson to have a good season. I'm hoping for everyone else to, because Deshaun Watson doesn't deserve a good season. We will move on to our last team in the AFC North, and that will be the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Baltimore Ravens, I think this year is going to be, if there's going to be any year that Lamar wins MVP again, it's going to be this year. I'm a huge Lamar guy. You know, I thought he was having a great first half of his season, possible MVP scenario. He was having himself a good year until he was injury-ridden, got the injury bug. I love the Ravens, where they're at right now, and I think they're going to have a phenomenal start to their season. I've got them winning their first 5 games of the year. I got them starting 5-0. And then dropping it to Tennessee. I just think Tennessee's going to have a lot of surprising games. Tennessee always seems to battle with Baltimore, so that's why I gave that one to Tennessee. I'm not actually going to have them losing very many games until their bye week. Their bye week is week 13. I'm actually only going to have them drop 3 games. So they're going to go into their bye week with a very similar record to Cincinnati at that time. Cincinnati at week 13 is going to only have 3 losses as well. So they will be tied for first in the division at 9-3 heading into week 13. But then I think this is where the second half they kind of face some teams that they won't have that great of a little bit of a shaky game plan. They'll start off strong. Week 14 they'll beat Los Angeles. They'll beat the Rams. Week 15, however, and week 16 they will lose. Miami they will beat, but then Pittsburgh they will lose too. So they'll finish their season off 2-3, which will put them at 11-6. Eventually putting them in second in the division. I think they'll be one of the top wildcard teams in the AFC. I still think they're going to be a very dangerous team. But my favorite thing about this Baltimore team is the fact that we're going to hopefully see a fully healthy Lamar on a brand new contract, a 5-year absolute supermax contract. And he's now got himself some weapons. You know, how many years he's been waiting? Give me some more weapons. Mark Andrews is my best target. He's a good tight end, but he's not. He's no Travis Kelce, you know. He's no Travis Kelce. I need a guy who can go out there, a younger guy. And he finally got that in Zay Flowers. And then hopefully Rashad Bateman can have himself a healthy season. And then With a little bit of a more questionable move, they picked up Odell Beckham Jr., who really hasn't had a Pro Bowl season in very many years. Um, he played with the Browns, played with the Rams in his last tenure, won Super Bowl with the Rams, looked very good in that playoffs, may I add. But giving him $18 million for 1 year, I know a lot of it's incentive based, and it's about $8 million base, but giving a guy $18 million when he hasn't played a full year is a very questionable move. I think they could have gotten him for like an 8-10 mil guarantee, full all. That's it. Maybe a 4 base up to 10. But I would love to see Odell have a good season. And I'd love to see Lamar really shut up all these people still. A lot of people still think he's a running back. If you didn't know, Lamar has a phenomenal arm, in my opinion. Not the elite arms like Mahomes and Burrow and probably even Trevor Lawrence. He's got a great arm. Those elite arms. But he's got a great arm. He's got great use of his legs. The offense can be a lot better in the dual threat of capability because of Lamar at quarterback. If they open up that passing more, then teams can't just only rely on stopping his running game. So that's what and then I love their defense. You got Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen, and then you got the and Tyus Bowser. You've also got that secondary of Rock Ya-Sin, Kyle Hamilton, the second-year safety out of Notre Dame, who I love. I loved watching him. He was easily one of my favorite safety prospects in the past five-ish years, other than another guy who I could say who was a little bit over 5 years ago, which was Marcus Williams, former Saint. He really improved after having that, he's being most likely known for being the guy that missed the tackle in the Minneapolis Miracle, which is one of the greatest NFL plays to ever occur, which hurts me to say, but it's the truth. But having him and then also having Marlon Humphrey, who's been a great corner for how many years. The defense looks great. The offense has the capability to look phenomenal. Baltimore's going to have a good season. The Ravens are going to be a scary team to face. But I do have them going 11-6 in second in the division, and that's about it for me. As we went through all 4 teams, we're gonna wrap it up here. Just to recap, we got Cleveland at 8-9, finishing in last. Pittsburgh at 9-8, finishing in third. In second, the Baltimore Ravens at 11-6, and then Cincinnati at 13-4, winning the AFC North this upcoming year. That's going to be all for us today. Appreciate everybody who's listened to the very end. Appreciate y'all. Next episode will be the NFC North, which is a very highly anticipated one for me. We get to talk about teams like this Lions young squad with Jared Goff at the helm at QB, who had a very, very sneaky good season last year. Better passing stats than Josh Allen. Guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown. They just traded away DeAndre Swift, but they got Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, who they just signed. But that shaky defense for them. You got a team like Minnesota, who obviously has the best wide receiver in the NFL in Justin Jefferson, and Jordan Addison, who recently just got in a little bit of law trouble, got caught speeding 140 in a 55, which is absolutely ridiculous. I would hope people would learn from the Henry Ruggs situation to not speed so fast. And then Green Bay with the new quarterback change. This is their third quarterback in how many years since Brett Favre came to the Packers? So how is Jordan Love gonna, fill out that big role in being a Packers quarterback? And then obviously the potential breakout year from Justin Fields coming next year. That'll all be said in the next episode. That'll be coming out in probably about 4 or 5 days. I like to try and get 2 episodes out every week, every 7-day span for this, so we have everything out and ready before the NFL season really gets underway in September. So, as I said, that's it for today. Appreciate all of y'all for watching and listening. Don't forget to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Follow if you're listening on Spotify and Apple, and follow the Instagram at Tello Talks Sports, where I'll be putting out more and more content. I'm going to have an NFC South edit edited video come out on the Instagram tomorrow, as this video will also be coming out on Thursday. At the time of recording this is Wednesday. Friday. At the time of recording this is Thursday. But I appreciate everybody, and see you on the next one.